Yeah, it's SpoFi Nation. Welcome to episode 2 of the SpreadZone. Today we're going to be breaking down the AFC, giving win totals, projections, things like that. Very similar to episode 1 where we covered the NFC. If you haven't checked that one out either before or after this one, go get your NFC fix over there as well. We've got the familiar faces back on deck. We've got T. Philly. We've got Baker, a.k.a. Breezy, in the studio. T. Philly, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. Ready to talk some AFC.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've had multiple COVID shots between the group, between our last recording and now. And so we're happy to be healthy. We're happy to be here. Baker, what's good with you, man?
I am hype. I took some notes down from the last one, tried to prepare a little bit more with the numbers and the lines. So I'm ready to go. I'm juiced up.
Let's get it. We'll dive right into it. But before we do, just a reminder, SpreadZone, we're going to be covering all things NFL here. Bets, props, awards, DFS. During this offseason, we'll continue to give these win totals and projections, but we're also going to break down each division, go a little bit deeper on a team-by-team basis, give some projected winners of each division. We'll give our, Super Bowl favorites and things like that. And then during the season, we'll be continuing up with the betting shows. We'll have a DFS show going for the NFL. So we'll really start to ramp up this content as the season gets closer. But these numbers are available right now. Everything we're going to be talking about today are the totals posted as of May 24th on Bet Online. So be sure to shop your numbers. We mentioned this in the first one to get everything that's available to you. Before we dive into the teams, just a reminder, 17-game schedule. AFC gets the extra home game this year, so I'll be curious to see how that affects you guys' number. But let's start with a relevant, pressing question right now. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. Where does Julio Jones land when all is said and done?
Oh, man. That's tough. Yeah, I'll stick with the AFC. They already went out and spent all of the dollars in the offseason. So I'm going to say he's going to go to the Patriots.
Okay. Ring chasing out there, I guess. I think what more could Julio want at this point in his career than to go somewhere where he has a chance to win a Super Bowl? He's still pretty elite. Baker, what's on your mind? Where does Julio Jones land for you?
Yeah, I don't feel as confident as I did when we were talking about Aaron Rodgers going back to the Packers. I mean, this one's weird, and I have no idea if he was set up or not. It just seemed so like a shtick on the show. I don't know. The Titans were thrown around, but I don't know if that's an ideal spot for him. I could see him going to the Patriots, but I don't know. If it's Cam Newton throwing him the ball, they can't get into the end zone. So I don't know if that's an ideal, trade spot for him. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, him on the Titans would be pretty crazy if that were to happen. But who knows with trades in the NFL, man? It's a wild place out there.
Yeah, you're stealing a little bit of my future thunder here, and the Titans will be the last team we touch on, but that's my pick as well. I'm a Titans fan, for those of you who don't know. So I would love to see Julio Jones there, and I think it's a pretty cool storyline they're setting up between A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. A.J. Brown's looked up to him for a while and, sent him a voice message through Instagram DMs trying to recruit him to the Titans. He's been working out with Derrick Henry, so it'll be interesting to see. Let's dive right into the teams, though. We obviously have the entire AFC to cover. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. Their projected win total right now, 10.5, juiced to the over. Tyler, we're going to start with you. What are your numbers on the Ravens, and what do you think about this 10.5 number?
Yeah, so 10.5. They 11 wins last year. Underperformed, actually. Would have been closer to 12 whenever you just look at the numbers. I have them again rated 11.75 wins, and just to explain that a little bit. So whenever I say 11.75, that's basically just a product of the power rating that I use to project on a weekly basis, and then that basically just turns into how many wins that I think they are above an average team. So for instance, the 11.75 wins is just a factor of me thinking that they are 6.5 points better than an average team. And, based on the different formulas, that equates to just under 12 wins. So I actually lean over for the Ravens, even with the juice. I personally have always believed in Lamar Jackson as a passer. Finally has some actual real weapons. I mean, they added Sammy Watkins. Sure, age is a thing, but drafted Rashad Bateman, Marquise Hollywood Brown showed flashes last year. Tight end position is a position of strength for them. So I like them to go over. You're creeping up on that territory. 10.5 wins, a lot to ask for, but 17 games, like you mentioned at the top of this, AFC teams do get that extra home game this year. So I think that puts them over 10.5. They get to at least 11 wins this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Sammy Watkins is a great addition if he can stay healthy. He's missed a ton of games over the last few seasons. So he's obviously not helping the offensive production if he's not on the field. And I like the draft pick of Rashad Bateman as well. Baker, what are your thoughts on the Ravens? 10.5 is the number. Where do you have them landing?
I'm surprised Tyler was like scared of double digits, but he's like, oh, I'm gonna go to over and juice too. I mean, I saw it at like minus 150. I don't know. That's gonna be crazy. I mean, I follow the same philosophy as Tyler with the numbers and how they break out, and I do have them at 12.5 this year, numbers wise. But my number for them is going to be 11 this year. So I still have them at the over, but I'm not going to take it at minus 150. They have the second hardest schedule. They had such a weird season, too. It's like they weren't going to make the playoffs. They lost to the Patriots in Foxborough in that monsoon. They picked up Kevin Zeitler, former Brown, helped the offensive line. They drafted Rashad Bateman. The offense was 7th in total points, but they were dead last in pass yards and pass attempts and pass completion. So it's all held up by the run game. J.K. Dobbins is an absolute beast. The defense was what held them up the last season. So I have them at 11, but I'm probably not going to touch this. So it's a stay away at minus 150 for me.
Gotcha. Tyler, I'll give you a quick chance to defend the take of more than 11 wins or more than double-digit wins that we stayed away from a little bit in the NFC, coming out of the gates early with 11.75 on the Ravens. Are you feeling better about the AFC in general?
I am. The AFC as a whole is just going to be a heck of a lot better than the NFC this year. I mean, outside of, if Rodgers leaves Green Bay, I mean, you have the Buccaneers, maybe the Rams, not a whole lot else. So as a whole, yeah, you're going to see much higher on the AFC this year.
Gotcha. Well, that rolls right into the next team. We'll talk about the Bills. Also 10.5, also juiced to the over. 13-3 last season. These guys are serious contenders. They added Emmanuel Sanders. Yeah, they lost John Brown and Andre Roberts, but these guys weren't wide receiver ones or, questionable WR2s. And they didn't have too much, news this offseason, which is a good thing if you're returning a team that won 13 games last year for the most part. Starting with you, Baker, here, what are your thoughts on the Bills at this number of 10.5, and where do you think they land?
Yeah, just as I was scared of the juice for the Ravens, I'm absolutely not scared of the juice for the Bills. I have them at 11.5 wins. I think this is a strong play for them to get over the 10.5. They're tied for the 23rd easiest schedule, and I'm getting that off of CBS Sports, so I'm sure people have different opinions in there for the strengths of schedule. But they were second in total points scored, third in pass yards, only trailing the 2 Super Bowl teams. The defense was middle of the pack. They need to fix their rush TDs given up. They were also 27th in red zone TDs given up. But I have them over even what the numbers are saying. So I'm not afraid of this at all. I would take this.
Awesome. Tyler, your thoughts on the 10.5. Are you feeling the same, not afraid of the juice on the Ravens? I expect a similar answer from you that's not going to scare you away from this Bills 10.5 either.
For sure is not. So I actually have them equal with the Ravens, 11.75 wins. Again, that equates to 6.5 points better than an average team. Like Baker said, CBS Sports has them, did you say bottom third? Easiest schedule. Something I'll say whenever you are calculating strength of schedule, I can't remember if I talked on this in the last episode, is wherever you're getting from, make sure that they are forward looking and not, looking backwards at, win percentages from teams last year on the schedule that they have this year. We want to look at how good a team is going to be this coming year as opposed to looking backwards, especially whenever you're factoring strength of schedule, because it doesn't do a heck of a lot of good, especially, considering the Jaguars, for instance, they had 1 win last year, doesn't do you a lot of good if they're going to be maybe a 6-win team. And we'll touch on them in a little bit. But as far as the Bills, I do like them to go over. It's going to be tough. They did overperform their expectation last year, 13 wins. They're closer to an 11-win team. With all of that considered, had a good offseason, added those pieces that you mentioned, especially around Josh Allen. He may take a small baby step backwards just based on the season that he had. I mean, it was an MVP caliber season. But even with a small step backwards, I still have them going over the 10.5 for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. This number looks pretty tasty, especially for how good this team was last year, and the fact that they're returning a lot of these guys. So let's move on to a team with a little bit less of a projection. The Bengals, 6.5 wins. Joe Burrow back on the field in limited capacity in practice so far, but we know the story with him. He actually had a really good start to his year last year before getting hurt, and then he was a little bit forgotten about because Justin Herbert had such a great second half of the season.
Right.
They go and they draft Jamar Chase, right? Here's some numbers from Jamar Chase's season at LSU when Joe Burrow was quarterback. In 14 games, he had 1,780 yards, over 21 yards per reception, 20 touchdowns in 14 games with Joe Burrow as a quarterback. Now, I know the NFL is a different beast, right? But these guys have the chemistry, and they've obviously been on the field together for plenty of games before. So, Tyler, sticking with you, your number and your thoughts on a Bengals 6.5, which could seem a little bit low getting their star quarterback back this season.
Yeah, shower narrative. Shout out to the guys at ETR. So obviously can't look too much at last season, just how they finished up, especially with Joe Burrow getting hurt. 4 wins last year, not really taking that into account too much. I put them at just above the 6.5 number. I like the over 6.75 wins. But we saw last year what happens whenever you can't protect your quarterback. There was a lot of back and forth as to who they should take, Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. I'm a fan of taking Jamar Chase. I mean, the difference that he can make, especially with those numbers, like you said, with Joe Burrow, the difference he can make in that wide receiver room is far greater than any impact, Penei Sewell can make on an offensive line. You still need extra pieces, but one wide receiver makes you pretty dangerous, and especially that Joe Burrow connection. I do like them to go over the 6.5 wins, but that is under the assumption that Joe Burrow is going to be back at 100% health this year.
Yeah, and let's hope so. I think I saw something just as of yesterday that he said his knee was around 80%. So obviously still time to get there. Who knows how long that'll take. Baker, your thoughts on the Bengals with this 6.5 number?
Yeah, we're going to disagree here. I don't have them. I have them under of a 5.5 wins this season. I am on the opposite side. I feel like they should have drafted a lineman. He had 1 second to throw the ball, and it doesn't matter. Okay, he can just throw it up in the air, but it's not like they're going to catch it every single time. I mean, they were putting up good numbers before Burrow got hurt last year, but they're 27th in sacks allowed. The line was just bad. The defense didn't rank well either. They're 25th in red zone TDs. They didn't really make any splashes in free agency. I know they picked up Mike Hinton, but I don't see them getting above a 6.5 total here, so I would lean to the under.
Okay, very interesting. And shop those lines out there. You guys might be able to find something other than a 6.5 that is that makes Tyler's leaning to the over a little more appealing, or if there's even a 7 somewhere out there that makes Baker's under even more appealing. So check your lines. A difference in opinions is good, and that's certainly why we wanted to have multiple heads on this. Now, I feel like we should have our own introductory video for this next team, because I know Baker is going to hammer the over no matter what. You tell me the last time the Browns had a win projection of 10.5 or more games. I certainly can't remember it, but that's the number they have going into this season. 11-5 last year, OBJ coming back. Myles Garrett is obviously a game changer every single time he's on the field. Baker, we're going to start it with you because it's only right. Gas up the Browns to me, and what's your realistic number according to this 10.5 here?
The Cleveland freaking Browns, man. What I've been waiting for in my 27 years of life was to see the Browns actually have a good season. It was just incredible to be able to watch it. I know that you guys have seen winning seasons before, but just strictly, I always tell myself, like, I wonder how different my life would be if the Browns were actually a good team, because they just consistently lose, and I've just built up such a hard shell for winning teams and not winning teams. But the crazy thing is the numbers, man. I have them right at 10.5. I'll probably bet the over just because they're the Cleveland Browns and they're my team. But I feel like the numbers are right aligned here. I don't think that they had the best offense in the world, and the defense was the whole time I knew it was going to be the problem, and they let Chad Henne run for 13 yards on third down in the playoff game. So I think they're poised for a way better season this year, though, just because of the additions that they made on defense. I think they're set up for success. I had the over at -105, so I would not be afraid to take that whatsoever.
Awesome. Tyler, before we get your numbers, I saw you shaking your head a little bit when Baker was mentioning betting the over because it's his team. Would you like to give us a lesson on emotional betting before giving us your numbers?
Just don't. I mean, the only thing that matters are the numbers. But that's for a future. I can't. I'll go on a rant. I can't do it. But I will say, I do agree with Baker in the sense that they should improve. Now, the thing is, they had 11 wins last year, but their numbers actually were closer to an 8-win team. So I'm not basing off the 11-win total. I'm looking at the 8-win total. So I do think they are going to improve. No doubt about that. I mean, they are a blueprint for now in the NFL, what you want to be out of a franchise. They make consistently smart decisions. It's been a complete 180 from what they were a few years ago, being the laughing stock of the league. I put them right at 9.5 wins. So that's a 1.5 game improvement. But I can't quite get to the 10.5 number that they're currently at. Like I said, they did do a lot to improve the team in the offseason, had a heck of a draft. But the only thing that's giving me pause for really not liking this play is that they get to play a third place schedule. So they finished third in the AFC North last year. They have a pretty easy schedule. I felt like a lot of things went right for them to get to 11 wins last year. And I think it's repeating that is going to be tough, but I'm not going to be too hard on the Browns. Like I said, I mean, they're in a really good spot moving forward into the future. I just don't know if 11 wins is quite on the horizon for this year.
Yeah. And one thing to consider in terms of strength of schedule, there's just always going to be a little more difficult than some of the other teams simply because of the divisional matchups, right? And you're playing, playoff caliber teams 5 to 6 times a year. So or an additional 5 to 6 times a year. So one thing to consider there that makes 10.5 or 11 wins even harder to get to. But I agree with both of your takes that this team is going to be better this season, and in fact should be pretty fun to watch. Let's move on to the Broncos.
Toughest team. The toughest division. Sorry. That's going to be the toughest division too. Just like you were saying, I just wanted to jump in on that because that does make these projections a little bit more difficult, because I have my projections at 10.5, but I could be right along with Tyler at the 9.5. So it's always interesting to see how it plays out. And this is just kind of the preliminary numbers. And then when the season goes on, they change a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, finishing third place in your division with 11 wins it's always wild. An indicator that your schedule is a little tough. So let's move on to the Broncos. 8.5 is the projected wins here, juiced to the over. They pick up Teddy Bridgewater. They draft Patrick Surtain. Justin Fields was still on the board when making that selection. Was it the right decision? Who knows? But they chose to go with a lockdown corner instead of going after a quarterback. Baker, we'll stay with you here. Broncos 8.5. What's your numbers and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have them 7 wins this year. I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback, and I don't know if Drew Lock is the answer. Threw a lot of interceptions. They definitely loaded up on defense. They took a step back last year, ranked 25th overall, 25th in points allowed, 28th in rush TDs. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if, they maybe play Teddy for a little bit too. I know in the last one we were talking about the Panthers and how I like Teddy Bridgewater. So if he does play, I can see them, staying around that 7, but I don't have them at 8.5. I would take the under and at +20. So.
Yeah, a little icing on the cake, a little lanyap for you there. Tyler, your thoughts on 8.5 win projection for the Broncos?
Yep, much like the NFC pod that we did with the Packers getting kind of discounted at the 9. I think they're getting a little Rodgers bump with the 8.5, just with the rumors that, they're one of the landing spots for him. They're a 5-win team last year, 8.5 this year, juice to the over. I don't see it. I'm with Baker exactly. I put them right at 7 wins. You can't, in your right mind right now, look at this team, evaluate it, and take the over 8.5. You can't think they're going to get to 9 wins. It's an easy schedule, but I still can't get them to 9 wins even with that. Teddy Bridgewater, not the answer. He won 4 football games last year in Carolina. Granted, the supporting cast is probably a little better in Denver. I will give you that. But if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks, and you can't win one without one in this league. So I am going to stick with the under there. I can't look at this team right now as constructed without Rodgers and get them to 9 wins. Just can't do it.
Yeah, pretty consensus under bet there, especially with the juice on the over. Let it be known that Aaron Rodgers, instead of being at practice, he's currently chilling in Hawaii. So I thought for sure he'd be back in Green Bay. The more days that go by where he's posting pictures on social media with his nice head of lettuce and just chilling in swim trunks in Hawaii, the less I think he ends up in Green Bay. So keep that in mind and just something to keep an eye on here. It'll be interesting to see. But moving on to the current laughingstock of the NFL, the Texans are projected for 4 wins here. They were 4-12 last season. What are we doing here, man? So we'll leave the Deshaun Watson conversation out of it, right? And we'll talk about the football team that they're going to be putting on the field at trying to win football games. They didn't have a draft pick until the 3rd round. They draft Davis Mills, a quarterback. They add Tyrod Taylor. They lost J.J. Watt. So, this team, in my opinion, got worse, and they're projected for 4 here. Tyler, coming right back to you, what are your thoughts on the Texans here at 4? And more specifically, what are your numbers? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, not a whole lot to say about the Texans. 4 wins with Deshaun Watson last year. They can't get back to 4 wins without him. And even with him, I don't think they get back to 4 wins either. So right now, as projected without him, I have him for 2.5 wins, if that's even possible. There's just, if Watson doesn't play in Houston, which by all means it does not. One, the off-field things, that's a whole separate issue. But even if he's cleared, which it's kind of looking like he might. He's going to put his foot forward to be able to play this year. But even if he does get clearance to play this year, it's not going to be in Houston. They've made that abundantly clear. And so did his camp. But without Watson in Houston, they will be picking 1st overall next April.
Yeah, hard to really feel any other way there. Baker, your thoughts on this Texans number of 4 wins?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Tyler here. If they wanted to take a pause on this season, I'd be like, all right, you guys can do it. I don't even know if anybody's going to watch your guys' games. They were 27th ranked in defense, offense, yards and attempts were 31st, 30th in rush TD. So it was really all on Watson's shoulders, and he wasn't even getting them to the win totals. I know the under is juiced. I got it at plus 100. I would be good taking that. I don't know. I don't have them as low as 2.5. I have them right at 4. So we'll see what happens, but I totally agree. They're going to be picking 1st in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to note there, your numbers might only project them at 4. But sometimes when you're projecting numbers like this or totals or whatever, the far extremes seem to be dulled down a little bit, right? You're not going to project a team for 14 wins, even though they might realistically be that good. So while the Texans could very easily lose 4 games, sometimes it's hard to get a projection to actually show up less than that. Because as far as the computers know, this is still an NFL team. They don't know what we know. So let's move on to the Colts, sticking in the same division, the AFC South. The Colts number right now is 10. 11-5 last season. Phillip Rivers out, Carson Wentz in. They were a good team last year. And you had Carson Wentz, who, aside from last season and the recent struggles he's had, has shown the ability to be a very good quarterback in this league. So will he sort of turn that around? Will he fix some mechanics? If so, this team with largely the same core of guys, bringing back T.Y. Hilton as well, have a chance to be a really good team. Baker, your thoughts on the Colts with this number of 10 and also on Carson Wentz this year?
Yeah, I really liked what you said in the last episode, that he kind of has like the yips and he just needs to get that cured. I mean, I think they're kind of banking on him being a good quarterback to have the numbers where they're at right now. But it's hard. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. They were like 9th in total points scored, 2nd in sacks allowed on offense, which means they, a good offensive line. But, how can we really digest these numbers with Phillip Rivers at quarterback? The defense was obviously fantastic. So I think they're definitely going to be right in it. My numbers are at 9.75. I don't know. I would take the under here probably. I know it's juiced to the under, and I'm just going to follow strictly to the numbers, and it's just going to depend on Carson Wentz play.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be ultimately what their season hinges on as well. Tyler, your thoughts on Carson Wentz? Can he cure the yips and this Colts number of 10?
Well, I don't want to pay to find out. I put him closer to 9 wins. I had nothing that we've seen from Carson Wentz since he, that Super Bowl run that Nick Foles finished off. Nothing we've seen says that he's, even above average quarterback in this league. And Phillip Rivers wasn't exactly the Phillip Rivers of old, but I put him closer to 9 wins. It's still a downgrade in my opinion from Rivers, or from Wentz to Wentz from Rivers. So even though with the 11-5 season last year, I put him closer to 9 wins this year. Can't get to the 10, even with the extra home game this year. I just don't see it. I'm out on Carson Wentz until he proves me otherwise.
Until further notice, you heard it here. Carson Wentz, ride the bench. Let's stay in the AFC South some more for the Jaguars. 6.5 is their projected win numbers. 1-15 last season. We know the story. They drafted Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence sent them to voicemail 3 times on draft night before finally answering. That's a bad sign to me. But they also had Travis Etienne, and they're playing in a division, right, where they get the Texans twice a year. They get the Colts twice a year if Carson Wentz is truly bad. So there's an opportunity here for the Jaguars to win some games. Do they get to 6.5 with juice to the over? By the way, is the question. Baker, your thoughts on the Jaguars and this addition of Trevor Lawrence and your numbers on them?
Jeez, just lightning like crazy here. I don't know if you guys heard that. Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. I don't know what Urban Meyer is going to be as a head coach in the NFL as well. I mean, I think he was talking about, hey, why can't we just get all of our draft picks this year so I can pick everybody that I want to pick? Like, it just doesn't work like that, Urban. He's just not thinking for the future. I don't know if he's going to have his heart problems on the sidelines, but Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. I think it's interesting that they paired him up with Etienne for this upcoming season, because James Robinson was a pretty decent running back, very bright spot for that team last year. But the defense let up the 2nd most points in the league. They're just not good. So it's going to rely heavily on Trevor Lawrence, and you just don't want to put that much pressure on a rookie quarterback. The numbers have them at 4. I might put him at like 4.5 just because the draft and free agency. But I'm still on under here.
Yeah, those are some good points you bring. One thing to know about, or keep in mind about James Robinson, is he was the workhorse last season. The guy was getting, somewhere around 28 to 30 carries or touches, especially because he was used in the receiving game as well. So bringing in Etienne is a good chance to sort of create that 2-headed monster, or to spell James Robinson. I don't know if they're going to, I don't know who's going to be getting the bulk of the touches, but that adds a little bit of chemistry to the backfield as well. Tyler, your thoughts on this Jaguars 6.5 number, especially with juice to the over? Are you taking the under as well?
Yeah, so I lean towards the under. I'm kind of in the opposite camp of you guys with the whole Travis Etienne thing. I mean, James Robinson last year, undrafted free agent, is the shining example as to why you should not take a running back in the first round. And then they go out and take a running back in the first round. Granted, he might be moved around the field as more of a playmaker, took some snaps out wide at, slot receiver in the preseason or in OTAs, I guess. But as far as their win total, obviously they underperformed last year. One win, can't really do much but underperform that. I have them at 6 wins this year, so I'm not going to be taking the 6.5 over. I'm not really, even with the easiest strength of schedule, I'm not willing to lay that juice for it. And I mean, I'm not 100% sold on Trevor Lawrence being this can't miss stud. I mean, I'm sure he'll go on to have a fine career, but there were flashes of him being human at Clemson. So not to say that he shouldn't have been the first overall pick, but he is human, and so is Urban Meyer. And it's going to take a little bit of time to piece together exactly what Urban has in mind. So I do think, 2-3 years from now, they could be a really solid team. But it's going to take some time to put that plan in motion. It's not going to be 2021. So I like the under 6.5 for the Jags.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, and this is probably where the juice is coming from, is Tim Tebow's fighting for a roster spot at tight end. So you add him to the field with Trevor Lawrence, and you immediately have an unstoppable duo. So
that's fair. I forgot about that. I take it all back.
Right. You're gonna have to factor that in.
Changed.
Yeah.
10.5 wins.
It's exactly division winners. Let's move on to actual division winners. The Chiefs projected for 12.5, the largest number we're seeing. They were obviously fantastic last season. They're contenders, they're favorites. A little bit of panic to start the offseason. They got rid of Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz, so they lose 2 of their offensive linemen. But since then, they've added Joe Thuney, they've added Kyle Long, and they've added Orlando Brown. So they've sort of revamped and beefed up that offensive line. They could be even better than they were last season, which is frightening given these guys have the ability to go out and, easily get 500 yards of total offense every single game. So Tyler, your thoughts on this Chiefs number of 12.5 and your numbers on them as well.
Yeah, like you said, lost 2 offensive linemen, but added 3. So that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are pointing to their offensive line as to why they didn't win the Super Bowl last year. It was really just the depth that they didn't have at the offensive line position. So bringing in more than you're losing, and you're not really losing a lot from a talent standpoint for the starters. They've done a lot to beef up that offensive line and the depth this year. So that was really the only thing that held them back, in my opinion, from winning the Super Bowl last year. I mean, I think it was Mahomes ran for 500 yards laterally in the Super Bowl. So he was just under pressure all day. That'll change this year. But for 12.5 wins, 14 last year, can't do much but regress. They were closer to an 11-win team last year, actually. So I have them at just under 12 wins. So I would lean under the 12.5. You can't take the over 12.5 with just the injury risk alone to Mahomes. You're better off just piecing your way week by week, betting on them. So I'd lean the under. We saw what they did last year. They kind of coasted through the regular season. So you got to ask yourself, what's the incentive? Obviously there's just the one first round bye this year, and there's going to be a lot of teams gunning for it in the AFC, but the way they coasted through the regular season last year, with that being the case, and the Steelers starting 11-0, I don't see the same motivation to, pile on teams week after week.
Yeah, the Chiefs during the regular season seemingly go out there and try a bunch of trick plays and try a bunch of cool stuff, and it works. And they're just there to sort of, have fun until the playoffs start. And they have a lot of fun doing it too. So, Baker, your thoughts on this Chiefs number of 12.5? Are they going to get a little bit complacent during the regular season, or do you think they'll win more than this?
Yeah, no, my numbers are aligned. I have them a little bit higher. I have them right at the 12 threshold. I'm not taking this over. This could be the same thing that could be said about the double digits, but 12 is a lot, and 12.5 at that is not something I'm going to touch. One random stat that I saw was the defense was dead last in red zone T percentage. I thought that was crazy. All the other stats, it was green and yellow across the board. So they were pretty average at that, but I thought that was crazy. They got to keep people out of out of touchdowns. That's going to be their bread and butter is their offense. So their defense has got to hold up their end of the bargain. But yeah, I'm not touching this. I'm not taking the over. It's just this number is too weird. And yeah, where's the motivation?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll take this opportunity. We'll do a little bit of a pause here. You mentioned red zone efficiency. We're all about spread zone efficiency. Our goal here, and if you follow us on Twitter at SpoFi HQ, if you enjoy the content and the value on YouTube and podcasts, please subscribe, like, rate our podcast, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of that. But our goal here is to help you be efficient in terms of making your NFL bets, keeping an eye on some lines earlier in the week, giving our thoughts on what these lines might do based on our numbers, and when might be a good time to get in on it if you are looking to make a bet. So again, do your shopping on your books, and follow us on socials, because we'll be posting this stuff on Twitter pretty regularly as the season gets rolling. Let's carry on. The Raiders have a projected win total of 7. They were 8-8 last season. They underperformed expectations, I think, last season as well. They added Alex Leatherwood, a really, really talented offensive lineman in the draft. They added Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs is really good. They added Kenyon Drake to the backfield. Nothing major outside of that. Nothing exciting like we're used to seeing the Raiders do in the draft, where it's the fastest player, or you never know what you're going to get from these guys. But a rather calm offseason from the Raiders, and a seemingly low number of 7. Baker, your thoughts on this number of 7 and your number for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Yeah, I have them at just over. I have them at 7.5. They have a tough schedule this year. They did have some bright spots. Josh Jacobs is a great running back. They were 6th in rush TDs. They were 6th in third down percentage, and they just didn't give up the ball a lot. But their defense was terrible, ranked 29th overall, 30th in third down percentage, and 30th in red zone percentage. So I feel pretty comfortable with my number at 7.5. The last time I looked, it was over -115 and under -115. I would lean towards the over. I think they did underperform last season, and I'm not as scared of it's not that juiced. So I would lean towards the over in this situation.
I tend to agree with you there. Tyler, what's your thoughts on the Raiders and this number of 7?
Yeah, not a lot of thoughts on the Raiders, but I will say that I am in disagreement. My power rating puts them right around 6.5 wins. Baker mentioned a hard schedule. I have them at the 5th hardest strength of schedule. So I will take the under on the Raiders. I mean, I just don't think they did a lot to get better from last season. And yeah, I mean, they had a decent draft. Like you said, it was kind of weird, not exactly taking the fastest player. Kind of reached, a lot of people said, for Alex Leatherwood, but I think he'll be fine. But yeah, I'll take the under at 6.5, or at 7. I have them rated 6.5 wins with a pretty tough schedule. I mean, nothing really excites me about the Raiders, but they do have some love in the marketplace. So there might be something that I miss. I might have to take a deeper look into.
Yeah. Also, similarly, how we factored in Tim Tebow, you have to factor in they'll be running Spider 2Y Banana quite a bit, especially in the red zone. So that adds about half a win, especially if you're playing with them in Madden. Moving on, we got the Chargers here with a win projection of 9, juiced to the over. They were 7-9 last year. We get a full year to sort of watch the growth and the talent of Justin Herbert. He did some really special things last season. He's got a little bit of that throw on the run, sidearm, behind the back, upside down, whatever it takes to get the job done, but he still manages to fling it on a dime about 50 yards down the field. So super talented kid. I'm excited to see him for a full season. They add an old reliable tight end in Jared Cook. So if Herbert stays healthy in a full 17-game season, the question is, what is the ceiling here? With this number at 9, it seems a little bit high, especially with juice to the over. But Tyler, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Chargers here?
Yeah, so I mean, what their ceiling is, I think, to me, they have a backdoor chance at sneaking up on the Chiefs for a division title this year. I really, really, really like the Chargers this year. I mean, they're the perfect formula of how you can build a winning team in the NFL right now. You have a solid quarterback on a rookie contract, and you can spend the money elsewhere. I only have them at a 9.5 win team right now, but I do like them to go over that 9, juice to the over. And like I said, I think they can sneak up on the Chiefs, especially if they coast through the regular season a little bit. But I do think they had double-digit wins this year. He did everything he did last year despite Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn's gone. So many close games last year that they could and should have won that were just boneheaded decisions, at the goal line in some of these games. So I think, Herbert had his success last year despite the coaching staff around him. And, with a better coaching staff coming in this year, I think they can really take a big step forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forget the exact number of games, but there were several weeks in a row where they lost on the last possession of a game by less than one possession or less than 3 points even. I don't remember exactly what it was, but to your point, if the coin flip goes their way a few more times, then, instead of 7 wins last year, they might have been a 9-7 team. So, Baker, your thoughts on this Chargers number of 9 with juice to the over and your numbers on them as well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Tyler here. I know when we were doing this last season, I started to look at Tyler's numbers, and he was pretty early to the love for Chargers, and I quickly was able to jump on and take advantage of that. And I totally agree. I think they surpassed that 9-win total. I'm not afraid of the overbet here, and I mean neither is Vegas at -150. I like the draft of Rashawn Slater. Shore up that protection for Herbert. I'm mad that Herbert beat Baker Mayfield's touchdown passing record as a rookie, but hey, that's just the way it goes. 22nd in overall defense, but they were top 10 in red zone TD percentage. So if the defense steps it up too, like Tyler said, the coaching, let's see what happens with that. But I do like them over here.
Yeah, you guys bring some great points there. We'll move on to the Dolphins with the same number of 9 projected wins. They were 10-6 last season. And I'll have to look at the numbers, but I'm pretty sure the Dolphins were my most profitable team to bet on last season. It seemed like there was always great value on them, and they were just playing tough games. And a lot of times they were, coming away with some big wins, especially in that stretch in the middle of the season. I just remember there were several weeks in a row where I had some great value on the Dolphins. They had Jalen Waddle through the draft. They have a great receiving tight end in Mike Gesicki. They add Will Fuller. They still have Devontae Parker. So they definitely have some threats on the offensive end. Tua, one more year matured. He's out of the umbrella now of Fitzmagic. So it's time for him to spread his wings and sort of do it all on his own. But I saw a quote from their camp, and what's different in Tua is that he's got a little bit of facial hair and a deeper voice now. So the kid's maturing right in front of our eyes, and this Dolphins win total of 9 seems like this team, it's an accurate number, but also a number that they could go over. Baker, we'll start with you with your thoughts on the Dolphins with 9 wins this year.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who are Dolphins fans, surprisingly, and I just feel for them. They had a pretty good season, just couldn't get there to the playoffs. They have a pretty easy schedule coming up this next season. We'll see with the draft of Waddle and Phillips and see what they can do. But Fitz kind of got them to the point that they were at, and Tua, he was good. We'll see if he's going to be the answer. They're certainly banking on it out there, but the defense held their own last year. Ranked number 5th overall, 4th in red zone TDs allowed. So my numbers have them at 9.75, but I do see them going over.
Yeah, I like that. And Tyler, let me get your thoughts on this. Is there a certain threshold that you're looking to go over or under before you'd actually bet it? If the projection is 9 and your numbers are giving you 9.25, are you betting it or staying away from it? Are you just looking for value at that point if it's a good number? 9.75 from Baker's numbers on a line here of 9 is pretty much a no-brainer, but what is that threshold for you before going into your thoughts on the Dolphins with a 9 projected win total?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually have them right at the same number. So I get it. It's 0.75 wins, a value. The hard thing is, you take that right now, you're locking up your money for, going on 6-7 months before that gets settled. So, whenever you're looking at these season win totals, obviously beating the NFL is so tough week in and week out, sides and totals. So sharp. So a lot of times, this is a way that you can attack the NFL market, and spread your bet out over the course of a full year. But if you're okay with locking that money up for that long, anything over a win and a half differential, I think would warrant it. But again, it's just whether or not you think you can, make more use of your money week in and week out. But like I said, I do have them at 9.75 wins. So I do like the over. This was a team I was consistently lower on than market last year. And part of that was just due to Fitzpatrick channeling his inner Fitzmagic. Kind of clunky how they handled the Tua situation. But like you said, he's gone this year. Tua's, the guy, and he knows he's the guy. And he's going to be healthy this year. He wasn't 100% healthy. I don't care what they say last year. But I think his health is going to make all the difference this year. And like you said, he's surrounded by weapons. So I see very few scenarios where the Dolphins don't reach double-digit wins this year.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. So Moving on to a team with uncertainties at quarterback, unlike the Dolphins here, we have the Patriots, 9.5 projected wins. Cam Newton's back. They draft Mac Jones. And let me paint this picture for you guys. Stop me if you've heard this build before. We have a quarterback in Mac Jones who's pretty accurate throwing the ball with two really, really good tight ends in New England. They add Jonnu Smith and they add Hunter Henry. So when I was looking at this, it gave me flashbacks of the Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski days where these guys were both on the field almost every down, and they were just a pretty unstoppable offense. So who knows what they're going to do at quarterback? It's Cam Newton's job right now, and it'll be interesting to see sort of how that plays out. 9.5 projected wins. Tyler, your thoughts on the Patriots here with a lofty number of 9.5 wins for a 7-9 team last year?
Yep, 9.5. I put them right at 9, but there's no chance in hell that I'm taking the under on the Patriots and Bill Belichick, especially on a revenge tour after Brady left and won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. And I will say maybe free agents must be undervalued now. There was a point where the Patriots used to laugh at teams for spending money in free agency, but they opened up the checkbook this year. So maybe that's a sign that, even with the salary cap going down, we, saw some value beat to be had on the free agency market, and that's exactly what they did. So I put them at 9 wins, but there's no conviction behind that. I wouldn't go against Bill Belichick, like I said, especially coming off a Brady Super Bowl. Okay,
so a little side prop for you then. Do you think Cam Newton is the quarterback of this team for the full season?
The full season, I'm not. That's tough. I would bet that Cam Newton starts more games than Mac Jones.
That's fair. Especially if he wins some early on and, they don't start the season 1-4 or 1-5. Nobody's going to be calling for his head or anything like that if they start the season 3-2 or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see. Baker, before we get your numbers, I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you think Cam Newton's going to be the starting quarterback for the full season if health is not an issue.
This is where I can't wrap my head around this, and I don't know what's going to happen because I'm not even the biggest believer in Mac Jones as well. So I don't know how long that they go with Cam in this situation. They were 29th in red zone TD offense. They just couldn't get it in the end zone. I can't remember how many pass yard touchdowns they were behind than other teams. What did they have, 4 midseason? It was insane. So if they can't get into the end zone, Belichick just said, take my money, and was signing every free agent this offseason. So I don't know. It's going to be hard to tell. The defense, they held up their end of the bargain, but I would say, I don't know. This is where it always gets confusing with me too, because if it was like the Browns, the rookie's going to play more probably because the fans are going to get restless. But I don't know what it's like in New England where they've had so many winning seasons, and I don't know if people are restless out there. I'm sure they are, but
they're not allowed to be.
Starts more games. Yeah, I know they're not. No,
they're just simply not allowed to be. What are your numbers on the Patriots here compared to this 9.5 number that's being projected?
Yeah, I'm not scared of the under. My numbers are right at 8, and at plus money, you can give me that all day. I don't care that it's Bill Belichick. I know he's a fantastic coach, but give me the under.
He couldn't chop it up in Cleveland, so not worth your time.
Yeah, not worth my time at all. Get out of here.
Yeah, that I'm sure that's what he said to Tom as well. You're not worth my time. Get out of here. And so now we have the Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers Twitter war going on as well. That's pretty funny. So if you guys are looking for some additional fun content, go check that out on Twitter. Let's move on to the Jets, projected at 6 wins. 2-14 last season. Sam Darnold's gone. They draft Zach Wilson. They add Corey Davis from the Titans. They add Tevin Coleman. They drafted Zach Wilson over Trey Lance, over Justin Fields. It's impossible to know what the end result's going to be. But I do also, I just want to hear each of your thoughts on if you think this was the right decision for this team. I know hindsight's 20/20, so nobody's going to hold you to this, but Zach Wilson over Trey Lance and Justin Fields. Your thoughts on that, Baker, and this number of 6 for the Jets?
No, this is the classic look good in short situation where they just get super hype after a pro day. Oh, one sidearm pass that goes 70 yards this is the answer of the franchise. I don't think this at all. I mean, this could come back to bite me, but I don't believe in Zach Wilson. I think Tyler feels a little bit differently. But for their numbers, I have them at 4.5. I would take under. The 26th in the league in defense, 31st in offense. I know we can't really look at that, because of the quarterback change. I know they did pick up some people in free agency, but I do like the under here. I love Robert Saleh, though, as the coaching change. I think that's going to be a complete 180 from Gase, and they absolutely needed it. He should not be in the league whatsoever. I don't even care at a coordinator position. But, yeah, I'm not a believer in Zach Wilson chugging water at the Islanders game either. Get him out of there. I'm taking the under.
A classic look good in shorts situation.
It's crazy.
Tyler.
It happens all the time. Just big on. It's just like it happens. I feel like a lot where they're just so big on the pro day and they're not looking at the previous season. I mean, he lost Coastal Carolina. I know that's one game, but like, where is it with him? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to send a message out to all my fellow high school football athletes out there. You remember what it's like when you're practicing in shorts, and then the first time you put the pads on and try to catch a football, you can't even close your hands because the pads make all the difference. So, Tyler, as a group of three men here who are very much look good in shorts athletes, what's your take on Baker's stance here? Your thoughts on Zach Wilson, again, over Trey Lance, over Justin Fields, and this Jets number of 6?
So I don't think Baker watched much BYU football last year because, sure, he had a great pro day. But what that sidearm throw did was just reiterate, and reemphasize what he did in his last season at BYU. I will say the previous seasons, it was kind of shaky, with Zach Wilson. But, the flashes that he showed this past year, I tweeted this out, that he's the closest thing. He reminds me so much of Patrick Mahomes. I know it's an easy comparison, but if anybody from this draft class is going to sniff the upside of, and provide the same value that Patrick Mahomes can, I think it's Zach Wilson. He was my quarterback 2 this year, and it was pretty close. Like I said, I wasn't, super high on Lawrence being this can't-miss prospect. Obviously, I'm high on Fields and Lance as well, but I'm all in on Zach Wilson. 6 wins, I like it to go over. Like Baker said, they get out from the under the Adam Gase. Saleh will, surely shore up that defense, and they have sneaky good weapons in New York. Added Corey Davis this offseason, drafted Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims from last year. Crowder might not be there, but if he is, that's another weapon. And Chris Herndon at tight end is also a weapon. So again, I'm high on Wilson. I think it was the correct decision, and I think he is going to turn some heads, at least in one apartment in Maryland this year with Baker.
Okay.
We'll see.
Baker, make sure to leave a comment when you move if you go to a different state, which state your head will be turning from by the end of the season. Yeah. So let's move on. Tyler, your home team here, the Steelers, 8.5 projected wins. First of all, I'd like to shout out our pal Connor for his love for Najee Harris. James Conner's out at running back. Najee Harris is in. He's a great dude, both Connor and Harris. He's going to do good things in the community as well. Just not sure how much of a difference he makes. James Conner wasn't a terrible running back to start his career either. So he's out, but Juju re-signed. They lost Bud Dupree. They lost Mike Hilton, Marquise Pouncey, Alejandro Villanueva. A lot of these staple names of the Steelers over the years, Tyler. We'll start with you to rep your home team and convince us why the Steelers are going to go over 8.5 wins this year.
Yeah, so like you said, not our friend James Conner, but our friend Connor had probably one of the more outlandish takes that I've ever seen take place. And it involved not wanting to give up Najee Harris for Aaron Rodgers, and I'll just leave it at that. Not too many humans I love more than Connor, so I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but that was a wild take. But
I'd like to intervene here. Connor, please contact us via socials at SpoFi HQ. We will get you on air to defend your take.
Would love for him to come on air to defend that.
So this is not a one-sided.
Yes. I don't want to pile it on, but I would love to ask a couple questions about that.
And he's genuinely probably one of the better human
Oh.
beings to throw in front of a camera and
Yeah.
just let him run with it too. So Connor,
sure.
hope you're doing well, friend.
Looking forward to that. But I am going to tread lightly here since all of Louisiana is already mad at me. But if I'm forced, even as a Steelers fan, I would take the under. I put them right at 9 wins, but I do have them at the second hardest strength of schedule going into this year. As a Steeler fan, I mean, there'd be nothing more I'd like to see than a successful Big Ben farewell tour. But I fear it could be a pretty bumpy ride. I said it before that I was fine with the Najee Harris pick. I mean, you need so much help on the offensive line that one guy isn't going to turn it around. But I mean, drafting a running back definitely won't turn it around either. I mean, what he does is adds a playmaker. I know there's plans of using him more out wide. And if he can be, even 75% of what Le'Veon Bell did in the past, I think it's fine. I mean, it's not the pick that's going to make them better 2 to 3 years down the road, but it definitely helps add a playmaker this year. So I don't think it was the correct pick, but it's one I'm okay with them getting wrong. I think 10 wins is the ceiling here, and I really see so many more paths where they come in at 8 or below. So I would take the under, even being a Steelers fan. So.
It is interesting. We mentioned they lost a couple of offensive linemen, but you mentioned it earlier. This team started 11-0 last year. Now, that was certainly not expected, right? They put some people on notice really quickly in the season when they got out to this hot start. But this was a team that was just finding ways to win. And they still have that sort of character about them in terms of finding a way to win. And they'll have it as long as Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger are running the show there. The defense will find a way to be solid as well. So, Baker, 8.5 seems low to me. What are your thoughts on the Steelers here and your projected numbers for them this season?
Yeah, it does seem low. But you got to think about how they ended the season last year and just putting it all in Ben's shoulders. I don't think he has it in him to handle that. So Najee's gotta be what Connor wants him to be, who's like the second coming of Barry Sanders or something like that. He's gotta have major production to take that load off of Ben. So I don't know. I think our numbers are pretty aligned. I can't remember exactly what Tyler said, but I have them at 9.75. But I agree. I don't know if they can get over 10. I think it's the numbers are aligning them higher just because of the season that they had last year. But I'm probably not going to touch the bet at all.
Okay. Flashback to earlier in this episode talking about the division as well. The strength of schedule is one thing, sure, but these division games that still only count for one game in the strength of schedule. I mean, you look at Steelers-Ravens games over the years, and these are some of the most hard-fought games that you'll see across the entire NFL. So factor that in as well, and that's why the number at 8.5 might seem low, but according to the projections, actually makes a little bit of sense. We'll wrap it up here. The last team to talk about, the Titans, with a projected win total of 9. This is my team here. They're coming off an 11-5 season. Derrick Henry, one of the best statistical seasons for a running back. He just absolutely does it all. The Titans at one point had one of the best play action offenses in the league, or the best play action offense in the league. Kind of got away from it a little bit. I was surprised that Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis, the Titans let both of them go. And so I think in order to have another 10-plus win season, you got to land Julio Jones at this point. But they did add Josh Reynolds, who's a speedster at the wideout position. And Tannehill's shown some good accuracy on these deep balls. So, Baker, looks like it might just be me and you finishing this one out. Would love to get your thoughts on the Titans at 9 wins, 9 projected wins. And I'm just going to leave this here. I think they do get Julio Jones. I think they're going to go for it. So what are your thoughts on the Titans?
Yeah, I think they should go for it. They are a decent team right now, and it is based on a little bit of Tannehill's play because Derrick Henry's obviously going to put up major production. I like what they're doing out there, and I think that you're right. They do need to stick with that play action offense. I think that's kind of where the Browns shine a little bit too, to just kind of not have to leave it all on Baker. And I think they're kind of built the same, these two teams here. So I like the Titans. I have them at 9.75. I think they do go over, and I think they could have some decent production. They definitely need to pick it up on defense, though. They cut both cornerbacks, but they drafted Farley in the draft to see, what he's going to be. But if they get the defensive production and they can go up in a game and then just have Derrick Henry run it out, that's a tough team to beat. That's a great formula to win.
Yeah, that formula definitely involves them getting ahead in the game, though. And we saw last season they had some serious struggles when falling behind in a game and just not having the ability to throw the ball, 30 times and play catch up, especially when you're limiting Derrick. Yeah, exactly. When they were down, I think 28-0 in the first quarter, right? And you blink and you're just not built to come back, and you take Derrick Henry out of the game plan because he's not a great receiving running back. He can bust some screen passes open, but he's not really running routes out of the backfield. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would love to see the Titans go out and get Julio Jones. That would make things pretty interesting there as well. So let's wrap it up with some final thoughts here. Tyler, his internet cut out. We're going to have him comment his thoughts on the Titans as well. So if you guys are listening on podcast form and you want to get his take on the Titans, head over to YouTube, check out the comments. We'll have him put it there. Baker, we talked about the Broncos bet being a pretty juicy one that we all kind of agreed on. So if that's your favorite bet, that's fine. But I'll ask you if there's anything else that stands out to you, one of your favorite bets from this AFC group of teams.
Yeah, I love the Bills. This is the same thing as we did for the NFC. I'm just not afraid of the double-digit totals. Just kind of how we were talking, and Tyler was referencing, if you don't mind having your money locked up for, the season, to have a whole win above what the projection is, I think that's a solid bet. And that's right where I have the Buffalo Bills from 10.5 to 11.5. I think they're a great team, and pair that up with an easy schedule is going to be crazy. And I'm happy for the Bills too, because they're the blue collar team, Rust Belt, fellow Browns, where they just did not do good for a while. So I'm happy for them. I didn't want to play them in the playoffs, so I'm glad that didn't happen. But yeah, we'll see what happens this next year. But I do like that bet.
Yeah, no one wanted to play Buffalo in the playoffs, and especially no one wants to play Buffalo in the playoffs in Buffalo. So it's going to be another huge advantage for them. And of course, home field advantage is big for every team, but it's well documented, the environment they have there, especially during some of these colder months as well. So that'll do it for the show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your engagement on socials. Again, at SpoFi HQ. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, podcasts, all that good stuff. We are going to be diving into each division here as we move forward and march towards this season. We'll break down each division. We'll give you some thoughts on division winners and things like that. But if you guys are here for just NFL, that's great. But a quick reminder, we have the T-sheet covering everything golf related. We have a SpoFi golf model where you guys can put in your own numbers that's available to you and get access to what we deem value plays. We have MLB content on a Bloop and a Blast. We have the Jock Chain, where we're covering sports on the blockchain with Topps Digital, with NBA Top Shot. And we'll be covering so much more, right? We have a Discord that's very active where we're talking UFC stuff every week as well. We have some great guys in there. Shout out to Significant Strike Podcast. Check them out on Twitter. These guys are in our Discord, giving us their thoughts on the UFC as well, an area that we're not as experienced, and these guys are providing some great value there. So join our community. Thanks for the engagement. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.